So, welcome back after the break. Yeah, maybe we just see that we slowly arrived, the last people. Yeah, now I feel nearly a little bit, a bit at bad to start again and talk again. But in a way, since this project is so much connected to my practice and research of the past years, I feel okay. I also want to put like my status quo of my work and research a bit as one of on the first day, and then I also don't have to talk so much anymore, and see how it interacts and be discussed. So what I'm now gonna share is a bit like a different, what I said in the beginning, really like focusing on the tactics and strategies of parasitism, which in my case, since I'm an artist, arrived from different artistic works, but as well I was politicized more in a political context of more the Right to the City movement, and came from this kind of activist approach more towards the arts. So that's a bit also how I arrived, and I think also for that reason I'm still very, very interested always in the connection of an artistic practice with really not a representational space like exhibitions, but really like the everyday and the, let's say, social environment and world context. So that's maybe for starting. So for reason on parasiting, parasite art as method and as tactic. I come in the beginning also again with some kind of conceptual drawings to go again a bit back what I mentioned, or what we mentioned at the beginning, to think about, okay, what do we mean with parasite, and where does this kind of whole terminology comes from, and why we gonna stick to it, and what we found interesting about it. So I start maybe here just also to open up a bit of different notions. I mean, it's also my work, since I'm not like a theorist, it's a bit eclectic. I'm more collecting from different sources. But to start a bit with what I also mentioned, like the parasite meant in the Greek time, parasitos, and para next to, and citos, like next to the holy grain, sitting next to the holy meal. So the parasite was in a way a type of a temple servant who could eat next to the gods in the temple, but was not a god. So he had already access to like a place where usually other people don't have access. So it was already this kind of transgressive figure of not being totally outside of the temple, but also not totally integrated. And that's a bit, I find a very interesting starting point to think about the parasite, and also was a figure which was not so much bound to the social class division. So it was, when you were not clear where's your legacy, if you were in which kind of position of society, the parasite was a bit of queering of this kind of logic of heritage in a way, back then already. And then but then when the temples in the Greek time got more privatized, the parasite as a temple servant got a bit more in a shadowy position, since the parasite became a bit like a private servant. And before, the parasite was more the servant also for the community, managing somehow who going in the temple, who going out, who's doing the parties, the fests, they come together, a bit like a community manager. And then when the temple became private, the parasite was suddenly only serving their own god, and becoming a bit a person who just talks after the person of his boss in a way. And that was already where the term was a bit like shifting. And then in the Roman time, later the parasite moved more into a dramaturgical figure. Like he appeared in the theater as a character who, when the parasite came into a play, he created like an unexpected change of plot. So always when the parasite entered, there was a shift in the plot. So again, a figure who in a way transgresses the linear story of a play. And then there's like a little bit of a gap where I didn't deepen so much. And then in the 16th century, like in Europe, when there was a fable for the antique time, and you used a lot of terms from this period, like in botanics and biology, they picked up again on the term, and they used it for plants and then also for biology. So there's then this kind of usual understanding of the parasite, maybe what many of us have, not everywhere, but have is about the tick, you know, about this kind of biological connotation. But somehow I'm a lot more interested in this kind of legacy of the term. Even if we go nowadays to like more current research in biology, we see also like it's not so clear about the definition who is eating from whom. Like there's, for example, also I think quite interesting, like was a research in, like from the Max Planck Institute, who talks about a parasite which is on the level of our DNA. So there's some kind of, I'm not so good in biology, so I always forget about how it was exactly termed, but there's like one parasite in our DNA which somehow lives from the proteins of the other parts of our DNA. And this kind of eating from the DNA produces like mistakes in the copy process of the DNA, and in a way that creates this kind of friction, this irritation, which of course in the long run leads to adaptation. So that's a quite interesting way also when you see, we also I think we talk later about how irritation also can become innovation. So we also have neither like a neoliberal terminology you could introduce, but it's like in this kind of period. And then if we go further, it was also then picked up in the French Revolution. Also this whole social Darwinism was based on like this kind of biological definitions of, you know, rectifying certain class divisions and structures in society. But also after the French Revolution, actually the aristocrats were called the parasites, who lived from the people, of course, like in the, how's it in English, like the Leitgesellschaft, yeah. So there was already this kind of position, and then it shifted after the French Revolution to actually call them the capitalists as the parasites, because they, of course, live from the work of the people. And they have this whole chapter, and then you come up into this whole Nazi ideology period, where also everybody who was not part of the Aryan race was seen as a parasite, especially the Jews, but also Sinti and Roma. Like a lot of people were also described as parasites. So that's also this kind of story, and that's actually what we also see nowadays. Actually, there's a bit of revival also in the right wing of this kind of term to describe people who are, in a way, shouldn't be part of society. So it's also like the whole question of, is there a possibility to reclaim and work with this kind of term, despite also such a past? And then it was only in the 80s, 70s, 80s, picked up again from, like, for example, from like the French people were pretty interested in that, like Michel Serres, Derrida, who talked about the figure of the third, and Michel Serres, who wrote up in this kind of book, The Parasite, which gone then somehow caused a new, or like at least in my research and perspective, like a new trend around thinking the work in the parasite in a different way, more systemically, more information theory about information and noise. So there are all these kind of contexts, and then it slowly entered into media architecture, media theory, architecture, and then also in the art discourse. And here also put like Anna Watkins Fisher's book here, because like she's already also here, so welcome already, who gives the talk, who then also in now 2020 wrote this book, The Art of Parasitic Resistance. So just a bit to open up the terminology we come later in. But what I'm interested in, I don't repeat so much some things I talked before. So it's a big thing is about, of course, the question of what is the parasite doing, the question of irritation, of friction, and also like this queering the binary. So the parasite is not, again, not part of the dualism, it's always creating the third, queering that and creating something which is not possible to place in categories. Yes, and then also like what Serres always talks about, and Michel Serres write it, like this situation that there is no system without a parasite. Like to place the parasite in a structural way, that we have always parasites in every relational situation. That means it's not that we have to create a parasitic position, but it's already there, and we have, like in my interpretation, We have just to embody, to find it, and to embrace it somehow, and to work with it, and to understand how that ends. And that's because also, like Sarah said, without a parasite, every system dies the death of order. So the parasite is also, in a way, this kind of irritational influx into a system, where you can also make a bridge to like even the second thermodynamic law in physics, where you know that there is no closed system. So you always need, in a way, an intruder in order to keep on the energetic flow. And what a parasite is as well, like a specialist in a niche. So always finds a place to coexist on the border of the systems. And what I find very interesting is that the parasite, they have managed to, what we had before, like using the resources, but doesn't have to follow the rules of the system. So that's, and in this position, conceptually I find a very emancipatory potential, because you are somehow close to something, you have resources, but you don't have to follow 100% the rules of the system you're feeding off. And that's yeah, why I wanted to bring in. And yeah, the last thing, what I think maybe comes also later in the panel discussion up, that a parasite works with, in a way, being appropriated. And that's often in, especially in resistant works from arts to activists, often you try to not be appropriated. You know, you put also energy in that, and the parasite is going with that in a way. It tries, actually wants to be appropriated. Just also heard, I mean, this example from the journalist, you think about how you become part of. And then in the second stance, in a way, you work with this kind of context and situation. Yeah, just a little point, because that's like somehow for me personally interesting when I think about artistic work and political work, the question, the difference between strategies and tactics. Since for me, like the everyday like is important. So to do something, again, also for me personally, this whole project is interesting, not only what comes out afterwards, but what is happening in the situation when we are complicit and dependent, and in this kind of situation. So, I mean, here this is the division I first draw a bit from Michel de Certeau, who talks about the strategies is like the position of power. So only when you have a position of power, you can have strategies. And that defines normally space, or is manifested in space. And in contrast, we have the tactics, which manifest on the level of time. So for example, maybe, whatever, if we're here, we have a certain structural situation of the space. And that can be defined of the position of power, who can define about the space. But what exactly and how we move and talk, that's something where Michel de Certeau sees this resistant potential, because you can never define 100% what is happening on the level of the time. You can define the structures, but not the tactical level. And then I use Maria Lugones, who a bit post-colonial writer from Mexico, and she is a bit, of course, criticizing this yeah, a bit older French writing, also because of this binary again. Okay, you have tactics and strategies, and you have just to decide. And if you make it like this, you're always saying that you can only, when you're resistant, you can only work on the level of the tactics. But how if we actually want also to reach the strategies, what do we do? Then we actually limit ourselves already to that. So she breaks that, this dichotomy with her term of tactical strategies, and with that she means, like she brings, for example, the example of the hangouts in Carrera, like a person who actually is not in a position of strategy. Like the Carrera can't really define the space, but she's hanging out a lot of time in the street, and by hanging out there, she gains, of course, also knowledge. She gains also agency of the street, and suddenly she also gets in the level of strategies and can, in a way, reach the point. And as well, like another example she gives is, of course, teaching theory. Teaching in university, she has also this kind of potential of tactical strategies. That just to say now, to come to the more practical point, to talk about the parasitic tactics I was working with, finding out through different artistic works. There's something maybe which is a bit more clear, like camouflage, that the parasite often works with camouflage, thinking about how to get in. Ephemerality, that's is related to this relational part of the term, that it's never constant, the parasite has always to move. Then leaving your habitat, you can't really do it in your own system because there you are a guest or a part of it. Passing is more using their own positionality, their own things that you can enter. I can enter systems where because I'm white, I have, for example, access to that, and they're like everybody, like this kind of different things. Find a niche, a morality, eating in somebody's place, and a redistribution. So I just go a bit faster. Like there are different tactics which came out of the practice since I see I have already 14 minutes done. Yeah. So I want to start with a very actually older work because like this work was really the starting point for me personally of getting engaged with the whole concept of the parasite. Since and that was starting in the situation of that I was moving to Berlin in 2008 of 2018, coming to the place where probably nearly everybody who moved to Berlin knows the recent years of not finding a place to live, having nearly no, like moving every 2, 3, 4 weeks from couch to couch, and thinking, okay, how to survive, how to exist in this kind of real estate situation. And what we then, together with a colleague, developed was this kind of penthouse, and which we then titled Penthouse as a Parasite, which then entered spaces and just put itself up on the roof, eating in somebody's place. And it was designed that it enters through like a kind of niche, like through a window. That was a bit the conceptual situation. So then was a bit like a Lego system. It was like so small that you could just get it up through the door, bring it up, and within 5 hours you had somehow built up this kind of house. And then after 5 hours you suddenly had this kind of building on your rooftop. And then again, of course, working with camouflage, once with the mirror, the facade, but working with this kind of question of niche, what are the spaces we can still live and work with, and also, of course, using the spaces which usually you're not allowed or shouldn't use, like also the penthouse, like this kind of symbol of being above, and working with this kind of situation, and also we use then the term like not bottom up but top down appropriation. So also flipping the way how you describe your practice and approach. Then also going in the niche of the legal point. So we installed like a letterbox, for example, the entrance. Asked people to send us a letter the first day because after 3 weeks you have you're in Germany. In German law, you get how is it say, like the Lebensmittelpunkt, like the center of life becomes there where you get letters after 3 weeks. So it means like you can't easily get evicted after 3 weeks. I mean, you can also get evicted, but not just by the police that somebody calls. You need like a court decision. So also working with this kind of legal niche. And the same with the structure. Also legally, private property or property in Germany is again defined through the fixed connection to the ground. So for example, the phone is here, and of course it's still my phone, but when it would be connected to the ground, in a way that it becomes part of cette caillou, I mean, a bit reduced. So for that reason, we didn't really screw the house into the building. It was just bent with strings in a way. So also if then they would destroy it, we could also claim the right of property. So also thinking about how you can use like the structures, again the strategies for your tactic. Then just for the English one, then it's also like the next part is how you really leave your scene and get into a different environment. And there I just put like a little clip.
Maxim.
You don't see it, I think.
Maximale Freiheit. Atemberaubender Blick über die Dächer der Stadt. So wird Wohnen zu einem Abenteuer. Lassen Sie sich nicht aufhalten von Spielarten der Architektur, befreien Sie sich vom unnötigen Ballast der heutigen Zeit. vereinen sie Wohnen, Arbeiten, Kochen und Schlafen in einem Raum. Drehen Sie die Flucht nach oben an, sichern Sie sich Ihr Recht auf Weiten. Das Penthouse à la Parasite bietet Ihnen unzählige Annehmlichkeiten. Panoramablick bei Austritt aus der Türe und alltägliche Freiheit zum Greifen nah. Sanitäre Einrichtungen und Blick bis zum Horizont, traditionellen Lichtkonzept mit romantischem Flair. Nutzen Sie die Flexibilität des Penthouse à la Parasite zu Ihrem Vorteil. Ziehen Sie stets in die angesagtesten Viertel der Stadt oder suchen Sie sich die Nähe zu den schönsten Parks. Optimieren Sie Ihren Standort nach Ihren Bedürfnissen und sichern Sie somit gleichzeitig den Wert Ihrer Immobilie. Seien Sie am Puls der Zeit. Lassen Sie ungenutzte Räume lebendig werden und investieren Sie in Eigentum, unabhängig vom Boden.
Yes, so of course also here really embracing the real estate logic and then placing it also at like the real estate platform. That's like the ImmoScout24 is like the biggest real estate platform in Germany, and then placing it also to a price which is the price of a square meter of a penthouse in that area. So each location had a different price. So really going with the logic of the real estate. So here it was in Neukölln, then in Munich it was 20,000 more expensive. So really going with it, and also of course you have flexibility investment, so you just move where you think that it's best for your investment, so it's also safe. If the neighborhood gets devalued, you just get to the next hip one, and you can always go to clean parks for your kids. So really, and then everything what you need for it, and then of course like within like a week there came 200 requests of people who wanted to look at it or buy it. Here took some out. For example, here's the English one. Hi, I'm a startup founder with a lot of venture capital funding to burn, and absolutely love the look of this amazing rooftop studio. It looks like the perfect place to get back to basics, meditate, and plan my next disruptive unicorn venture. I would love to view the property and totally prepared to face down anyone in a bidding war. Peace. So, I mean, there were like really many people from in different areas. Of course, I mean, I would say like 60% just took it as a real estate offer, 30% were a bit like, what is this? And then it was really about doing this kind of guided tours. Then of course you have these showings. So people came, that was for example actually one of the most rich real estate investors in Munich. That was a young couple who searched a place to live, and it was still the cheapest. So you know, and then you had this kind of situation of ambiguity and of irritation, because that was here in Berlin, Alexanderplatz. That was a couple from Berlin, Wannsee in the south, who was a bit more richer, and they were searching more places like exquisite real estates. They were like had this kind of portfolio of all these very special ones. They wanted also to buy it, but there in the contract. There was like, the contract was binding, it was a conceptual contract, so you could buy it, but you had, it's like you had, it was bound to the name in the concept. So a parasite is an uninvited guest. So you can't put the house on your own rooftop. That means like you have always to, in a way, squat to put it on a different roof. So also they, in the end, they didn't want to buy it. Also like a museum director from the Neue Museum Nürnberg wanted to buy it. She also wanted to put it on their roof, so also she couldn't buy it. So it was also working with this kind of situation, but there I come also to the point of amorality in a way of the situation. And maybe that's a bit similar to what maybe we heard with the journalist. You're doing these tours and you're in the situation that we never lived somehow in a way to play in the system, and what we hear later. So we stayed with this ambiguous and troublesome situation, in a way want to cause the trouble. So we had different roles, embracing it, but also in a way it's also going back to the other thing, we didn't really lie. I was representing the person, like the architect, and my colleague was then the seller, the makler in German, I don't know how it's in English, you know, who makes the contract work. And it was actually true, people could sell it. And there also is then the difference for me between theater and performance. So for me it's really a performance, so working out in real situations. So if somebody would have wanted to buy it, they could buy it, but really working on this kind of edge. And then the next step, of course, was the kind of whole fight with this kind of platform, who the first year they always kicked that out because it was not fitting to the rules, because it was somehow, what was it again? It was like in the wrong category, because it's like a house with ground, but it's just a house, a Typenhaus, so whatever. Then we were kicked out, so every couple of days we just then changed the names. They normally like a word, and then we had another 6 days until the algorithm found us. So that was the way of keeping it up. And then, but then the next year when we went to Munich, they, of course, they changed the strategies, and we can also think back about what we started today, with the relationality of the term. So suddenly the house became, I would say, the host of ImmoScout, which then got a Parasite, because it got the most clicked real estate in Germany. So it became this Haus der Woche. It meant that everybody looked at it and they used it for their marketing. So they then just appropriated and said, look how cool we are, we have this real estate in our portfolio. And then suddenly the critical friction is gone, and the parasite in a way is not a parasite, and it's like the penthouse a la host or whatever. And so that's this, and then maybe since I don't have so much time, I go, yeah, I mean, it's just, I think it's interesting when you think again about strategy. So here it was on a place, and it was very fast, it was clear they gonna demolish it. So they had already a company, it took some time to find it because it was a bit exposed. And then there was a question, what do we do? Do we let it just destroy and maybe document that? Or how do we deal now with it? Do we bring the lawyers in right away? Or like what then we ask, okay, what maybe would a parasite do? And in a way, thinking about the parasite knows that it's always losing in the direct confrontation. So it's not going through this ideological fight of opposing directly, because we are just two people. We never, we are also not a big activist group which is nicely organized. So what we did, overnight we disappeared and just left a postcard to the company who wanted to demolish it, which actually appeared later in the court as a reference. And then went just to the next place, somehow to not think about, okay, how do I channel in a way also my resources and energy, and just to get to the next niche where you can stay for a time until we again come back to the ephemerality. So it's clear the niche is never forever, that you have constantly to move. And then in the court, there are like court things like how the court then was, in a way it didn't get in big problems, but it's a different story. And then maybe the question also with this kind of question of redistribution. So that was here in a place in Munich where they wanted actually to demolish this building, which was once a state building. Then they made a shady deal on one to make penthouses and 5-star hotel. So we went on top, and then in a way, I think it's now too little time to show. We also again did like this kind of little advertisement movie to invite people
Feel welcome.
To invite people somehow to stay one night in the kind of privileged position, and now it's affordable, now it's for free, and also using the slogans from actually the hotel who already offer their penthouses. So also again working with that, and then having also contact with a lot of people like who then often left like this kind of in a guest book. So also thinking again how you bring it in an everyday context. So there were not people who, because we made like a tombola, we put it out online, and then people wrote us, and then people could always spend one night there. And so also think about how you get in different environments and surrounding. From the real estate platform, there you have people who just search on their jobs and whatever, they search for real estate and bump over that, and suddenly they get into something, or because they just sleep one night on this kind of place. How is the time? Just to, okay. That's other point is use for symbolic value. I mean, that's, I think it's also not enough time. Now I jump a bit ahead, because that was like the other one was a project 7 years ago, and that was now, which was happening this year. It was a very short little intervention, but I think it has also, when we think about not only about the works, but about these different categories of parasitic tactics, how the work that was happening here in Berlin and Warschauer Straße, It's like, for those who are not from Berlin, a very iconic place for subculture. Also after the fall of the wall, a place of a lot of, I would say, power. And they're like the new Amazon headquarter now opened, and they built the biggest tower in the city, but also didn't really mention that it was built. So they learned from Google, who had problems at Görlitzer Park and never could open the headquarters, so they managed to get a different strategy, in short. So what we did, we, together with Marina, who is also here, we went there on the day of the opening. So in the morning of the opening, we went there as like passing as Amazon workers. So we were disguised as the PR team from Amazon with flyers and saying that we are welcoming the neighborhood. For that reason, symbolically, we renamed the street today, and we are saying welcome to the neighborhood. So again, then we went there, renamed the street, and then I played just a little 1 minute clip.
So we are here with Amazon today because we're renaming the street to Amazon Streets to welcome our new workers and say hello to the neighborhood.
I think after a couple of years of building, we finished, and now we're going to move in with all our colleagues, and that will be amazing today. 3000 Arbeiterinnen, die jetzt einziehen. Also richtig, ja, voll.
Also mehr fahren müssen. Amazon kommt an. Amazon ist richtig investiert, eine Beziehung mit der Nachbarschaft jetzt hier aufzubauen. Der Sockel wird für die Nachbarschaft offen. Von Amazon. Kommt richtig zum falschen Ort. I already had some reactions from the neighbors. Some people are really nice, they're curious about what's happening. Some people understandably are still a bit suspicious of Amazon coming into the neighborhoods, but I'm looking forward to the arrival of our workers today.
Ja, aber was kommt die da?
Ja, weil Amazon halt, ich vermeide Amazon.
You know, I come by here every day for years, and I don't see Amazon talking to their people. Yeah, this is the first time I've heard of any Amazon getting in contact with anyone.
It sounds great having Amazon in the heart of the city, but my opinion is Warschaustraße has a long history, and this Warschaustraße has a different meaning for the different age groups. And suddenly changing it Amazonstraße, I'm not okay with that. And this is just my personal opinion.
Okay, also was habt ihr euch denn dabei gedacht? Was für Reaktion habt ihr erwartet?
Ja, so beides.
Ja. Das klingt spannend.
Also es gibt ja schon da den U-Bahn-Platz und das ist so, also die Gegend, die so am wenigsten für Berlin steht für mich. So, also so, das ist halt da nicht Berlin, diese ganze Ecke hier, sondern das ist halt...
Yeah, so again, of course, working and like also again not lifting somehow, and so this creating this friction but keeping the friction, and they're also not thinking about they're like also thinking about where do you like leaving this kind of scene, so you don't work with this action maybe for your own bubble in a way where you maybe want to lift it to get maybe the credits for, but the Parasite, it's not about a heroic action. So the Parasite is not lifting, it stays in a way undercover what was happening, and I think that's a very important part of the Parasite, because also when you disclose, then you either get kicked out, you get problems, maybe you get some fame, but in a way it's like really normally then more talking to your own surrounding. But you see like also here, there are like all these different voices who who have already all these kind of opinions there. So in a way, then more placing strategically in a point of this day of the opening where everybody goes there, where the press is already there, and then working and then more undercover with the, for example, protest, where we got to know the information from Berlin with Amazon, like an activist group. But they also openly can't really collaborate with that because for them it's too ambiguous, this kind of action. So it's this kind of interesting situation that they in a way support it, but they're also not easygoing with it because it's in a different language and in a different tactics. So that was then a TikTok video, just that maybe this, I find it still, because I'm not sort of TikTok generation, but that got in 2 million clicks and I still don't get why such a video gets then...
Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man? Just get your ass on, man. You should have got down. Oh, my God. Oh, hell no.
Yeah, so again, like these kind of things, yeah, so, okay. Now I think actually I was a lot slower than always, so I jump all the projects, because I think we have now 6 minutes left, right? So then maybe we can more open up for discussion then, because actually I wanted to show also like, that was the first one, the last one, but then also like thinking about a different project, evolve like different forms of working with these codes, with these tactics. Sometimes like it's starting a startup, which is a startup but has a bit different notion to really get in these kind of different environments, and then maybe to make the bridge also now to this On Parasiting, like not what maybe we all, like all the artists who gonna participate in a way working, what we also talked in the break about, working is also a way of integrating. It's in a way of getting in contact. And that's, I think, is maybe for me personally, like the important part to work artistically in a way of direct contact, and not only gaining knowledge and resources and then showing it somewhere else. So that's maybe to close, and then we have maybe, if there's 1-2 questions, I think there are now 5 minutes. So thank you. And sorry, what happened?